Welcome to the Mechanical Lab. Today we're going to go over the typical example for an assembly of a D8 transmission. With our clutch house securely in the press, we have now inserted our new bearing, and we'll use our pusher plate to make sure it is fully seated. Now with our retaining ring pliers, we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring. If removed, you'll want to install your new orifice plug. Now we'll install our new seal rings onto our input shaft. Now we'll install our second one. Next, we'll install our new O-rings. Our second one. We'll use our transmission oil to lube our seal rings and our lower O-ring seal. With our clutch housing on suitable cribbing, we will now install our input shaft. You want to make sure it's fully seated. Now we'll attach our suitable lifting device to our lifting link, and then we'll rotate 90 degrees. With our retaining ring pliers, we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring. Now we'll rotate back up. We will go ahead and install our new seals into our clutch piston. Note there is a lip, and you will be wanting it to face up. Install our outer seal. There is also a lip on this one. Make sure it is facing up. We'll use our transmission oil to lube our seals. Now that we are back in upright position, we can now install our clutch piston. With our M12 lifting links installed and our suitable lifting device, we can now lift our input shaft and clutch housing and install it. Now we can remove our lifting links and suitable lifting device. Now with our new spring pin, we'll go ahead and get the spring pin started in the hole. Now that we are flush, we can go ahead and install our two roller bearings into our planetary gear, our thrust disc, and then our second thrust disc. We want to make sure they're all flush and even on the inside. for your planetary shaft to go smoothly through. You'll want to align the larger hole facing the spring pin. Once you are flush, we can go ahead and install our spring pin. You won't want to hit your planetary gear, so use a suitable punch to install flush. And we'll repeat these steps for the remaining 3. With our planetary carrier firmly in the press, we will now install our new bearing. We'll use our pusher plate to make sure it's fully seated. With our retaining ring pliers, we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring. You want to make sure it's fully seated. Now with our planetary carrier assembly on suitable cribbing, we'll install our ring gear. You'll want to install it past the retaining ring groove, and then you'll go ahead and install your retaining ring. You'll want to make sure to line the openings with 2 of your grooves. Once in place, you'll want to use your 4 screwdrivers to compress your retaining ring. You'll want to start from the back. Once you get your 4 screwdrivers in, you will just compress your retaining ring and lift up on your outer ring. While using the 4 screwdrivers to compress the retaining ring, use the assistance of another to lift up on the outer ring. Now we can remove our 4 screwdrivers and the retaining ring snaps in. Now we can go ahead and lube our upper O-ring on our input shaft. After rotating our planetary carrier assembly by 180 degrees and installing our M8 lifting links and our suitable lifting device, we can now go ahead and install. Now we can go ahead and remove our lifting links and suitable lifting device. With our planetary carrier assembly installed, we can now go ahead and install our first clutch plate. This one is reverse of the others. Once it is installed, we can install our 5 reaction dials to make sure they are fully seated. We'll go ahead and install our first friction disc. Next, we have a clutch plate. And we'll repeat these steps until we get to our last friction disc. And our last friction disc. After installing our M16 link brackets and our suitable lifting device, we can now install our center plate. For orientation of the plate, you can align your oil passage with your clutch housing below. Now we can go ahead and remove our suitable lifting device and lifting links. We'll go ahead and install our 21 bolts, and I'll go ahead and run them down with my impact. And then after that, we can torque them down to 75 foot-pounds. With them all finger started, I'll go ahead and run them down. You want to be sure to run one on each side so you don't bind up on your reaction dowels. With our torque wrench set to 75 foot-pounds, we can go ahead and tighten down our bolts. We'll go ahead and install our new O-ring onto our sun gear. Now we can go ahead and install our sun gear. Now with our new spring pin, we'll go ahead and get the spring pin started in the hole. Now we'll install our first layer, our planetary gear, our roller bearing, and our 2 thrust discs. And then we'll install our lower planetary gear, roller bearing, and our 2 thrust discs. You'll want to be sure that they're fully aligned when you're looking down in, so you don't crush one of your thrust discs with the planetary shaft. Once they're fully aligned, we will install our planetary shaft. Keep in mind that there is one side bigger than the other, so the spring pin can only go in from one end. Once you're flush, we'll go ahead and install our spring pin the rest of the way. Be sure not to hit your planetary gear, so use a suitable punch. Now that our spring pin is flush, we'll go ahead and repeat that process for the rest of the 4. Now that we have our new bearing installed, we'll go ahead and use our pusher plate to fully seat our bearing into the planetary carrier assembly. Now that we've rotated our planetary carrier assembly by 180, we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring. With our planetary carrier rotated back 180 degrees, we now can install our sun gear. Now we can install our first outer ring gear. This one will just free float. Then we can install our retaining ring. Then our outer ring gear will just slide on over. With our planetary carrier assembly rotated back by 180 degrees, you can now install your seal ring. These are interlocking, so you'll just have to press from the back and press them around until they lock in place. Now we can go ahead and loop up our sun gear O-ring. Now with our M8 link brackets installed into our planetary carrier, our suitable shackles, and our suitable lifting device, we can now go ahead and install. Now we can go ahead and remove our lifting links and suitable lifting device. Now we'll go ahead and work on our second clutch pack, starting off with our first friction disc, our clutch plate, and we'll repeat these steps until we get to our last friction disc. With our clutch pack installed, we can now install our springs and rods. There'll be 5 of each. We will go ahead and install our new seals into our clutch piston. Note there is a lip and you will be wanting it to face up. Install our outer seal. There is also a lip on this one. Make sure it is facing up. Now that we have them both installed, we'll use a little transmission oil to lube up these seals. Now that our new seals are in, we'll go ahead and install our clutch piston into our clutch housing. Now that our clutch piston is installed, we'll go ahead and install our clutch plate. To know if you're right side up, just make sure the holes are aligned. After installing our clutch piston and our last clutch plate to where we can use our compression tooling group, we can hold up our clutch plate against our clutch piston to hold it in place, and we've rotated it 180 to where we can install our M16 lifting links and our suitable lifting device. Now we can go ahead and install. After all the weight is on the rods and springs, you'll just have to make sure they're all lined up to where the clutch housing will fully seat. Once they're all lined up, it'll drop into place, and we can now remove our lifting links and suitable lifting device. With our clutch housing fully seated, you can see it's held up by the spring pressure. We can now install our 4 bolts. Tighten 2 of the bolts before applying final torque. And we'll use our torque wrench, set to 40 foot-pounds, and start snugging them up. With our retaining ring pliers, we can now install our retaining ring. Now we'll go ahead and install our sensor rotor and our new screws. There'll be 9 of those. We'll go ahead and get all these finger tight. With them all snugged up, we can now go ahead and tighten them to 33 inch-pounds. With our sensor rotor installed and all 9 of our screws torqued down, we can now go ahead and install our ring gear. Now with our new spring pin, we'll go ahead and get the spring pin started in the hole. We'll install it until it's flush on the inside. Once it is flush, we'll go ahead and install our thrust disc, our planetary gear and roller bearing, and our last thrust disc. You'll want to make sure everything is flush before you install your planetary shaft. You'll want to make sure the big hole is facing the spring pin. You can use your punch to make sure it's aligned. Then you use your punch and hammer to fully install your spring pin. You want to make sure it's flush. And we'll repeat these steps for the remaining 3. Now that we have our output shaft securely in our press, we'll use our pusher plate to fully install our new bushing, and we'll repeat this for both ends. Now we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring onto the bottom of our output shaft. We'll work it all the way down until it's into the bottom. Now we'll rotate our output shaft by 180 degrees, and we'll install it into our planetary gear set. Now that we have our new bearing in place, we're going to go ahead and install our pusher plate, and we're going to lower the press until we fully seat the bearing. We'll rotate 90 degrees. We'll install our sun gear and bearing. With our retaining ring pliers, we'll install our retaining ring. And then we'll rotate back up. With our M8 lifting links installed and our suitable lifting device, we can now go ahead and install our cable strap. This will prevent it from tipping over when you're lifting it. Now that we're secured, we can go ahead and install. Now that we're fully installed, we can go ahead and remove our lifting links, our suitable lifting device, and our cable strap. Now we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring, and we'll just let it sit right inside of our sensor rotor. With the new bushing placed inside the output shaft, you'll use your pusher plate. You'll install it, and then you'll use your press to fully seat it. And you'll repeat this for both ends. Now that our new bushings are installed, we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring. You'll want to install it to this notch here. Now that we have our new bearing in place, we're going to go ahead and install our pusher plate, and we're going to lower the press until we fully seat the bearing. Now that our retaining ring is on at our notch just above the slot for it, we'll install our plate. Now we'll install our sun gear and our bearing. With the retaining ring being dropped down, you'll expose your notch for your other retaining ring. We'll go ahead and install that. Make sure it's fully seated, and then we'll rotate 180. Now we'll use our retaining ring pliers to drop our retaining ring down into its slot. Now we'll go ahead and install our new O-ring. Now we'll go ahead and install our new O-ring. And we'll repeat this for the remaining 3. We will go ahead and install our new seals into our clutch piston. Note there is a lip and you will be wanting it to face up. Install our outer seal. There is also a lip on this one. Make sure it is facing up. We'll use our transmission oil to remove our seals. We will go ahead and install our clutch piston. Make sure your splines are aligned. Now we'll install our Belleville springs. You'll want to note the orientation of the springs, starting with cup down, then alternate up, down, up, down. Then we'll install our spacer plate. Be sure that the notch is facing up for the retaining ring. Then we'll set our retaining ring on top, and we'll move over to the press. Now that we're in the press, we want to make sure our retaining ring, the opening, is facing towards us and is visible in the gap in our pusher plate. We'll install our pusher plate evenly on the spacer plate, and we'll slowly lower the press. We'll compress the springs until you can see the gap for the retaining ring. We'll work our retaining ring around until it slides into our gap. And just for a test, we'll make sure it spins in the groove. And then we'll slowly release the press. With our carrier assembly, flip back over 180, we're going to install our M6 lifting links. Now we'll go ahead and install our hub. Now that we have our suitable lifting device attached to our lifting links, we're going to raise the planetary carrier up and install our Allen bolts. We're going to install our new Allens because they come with patch lock. With our 5mm Allen, we'll go ahead and snug these down and then remove our lifting device. Now we'll use our 5mm Allen to torque our Allen bolts. We'll torque it to 120 inch-pounds, plus or minus 12. Installing our thrust disc first, our ring and roll bearing, and then our last thrust disc. Now we install our shaft. make sure the dowel seats into the notch. We'll just make sure it fully seats. And we'll do that for the remaining 3. Now that we've rotated our planetary carrier and hub assembly by 180 degrees, we'll go ahead and install our friction disc first and then our clutch plate. And we'll repeat this until we install our last friction disc. Now that our last friction disc is installed, we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring. Now that our retaining ring is installed, we'll go ahead and install our reaction plate. Make sure when you install it, your extra gap for your retaining ring is facing up. And we'll go ahead and install our last retaining ring. Now on the ring gear, you're going to want to pay attention to the holes. They're on each side and they're in between the gear teeth. You'll want to align all your friction discs, the teeth, the same. You'll want to get them aligned the best you can around all evenly. So when you bring your ring gear up, you'll use your holes to align it with the teeth of the friction disc, and you'll slowly lower it down in. And once you hear it hit the bottom, you'll know you're past all your friction discs. Before we install our shaft, we're going to apply some transmission oil to lube our seal. Now that our seal is oiled, we can now install our shaft. Using a punch, we will tap on the outer race of the bearing until it's fully seated. Now we'll go ahead and install the retaining ring. And we'll just walk it around until it fully seats. Now that we've got our planetary carrier assembly and hub assembly and our output shafts inserted, we've kept pressure to make sure the output shafts and ring gear have stayed fully seated and engaged with all the friction discs. And we're going to install our sun gear. And once it is fully seated, you will know that you are fully engaged when you can see your retaining ring slot. And if you can see that, then you're good to install your retaining ring, and we'll go ahead and install using our retaining ring pliers. We'll just work it all the way around until we know it's fully seated. Now that I've got my M6 lifting links and my suitable lifting device hooked up, I can now use my locking pliers to compress my retaining ring. I will use a napkin to go in between the locking pliers and the sensor rotor to protect it. With our retaining ring compressed, now we can go ahead and set our planetary carrier and hub assembly. Now we can lower our planet carrier and clutch hub assembly. You'll want to be sure that you line up your notch in your clutch hub to your retaining ring. Once you're all the way down, you'll have to align your gears. You can turn your output shaft to align your sun gear. Now that we are fully engaged, lower down until all the weight is off your lifting device. And once you're fully seated, you can remove your pliers. And as you raise back up, you will see the retaining ring engage. If you remove these two plugs, now is a good time to go ahead and install them. Now we can go ahead and install our poppet, our spring, our retainer, and our retainer ring. And you can repeat this for the other. We will go ahead and install our new seals into our clutch piston. Note there is a lip and you will be wanting it to face up. We'll use our transmission oil to lube these. Install our outer seal. There is also a lip on this one. Make sure it is facing up. Once again, we'll use some transmission oil to lube these seals up. With our new O-rings installed in our clutch piston, we can now install it back into the housing. With our M16 lifting links installed and our suitable lifting device, we can now go ahead and lift and place our clutch housing. Now that we got it in the air, we can go ahead and install 2 bolts to help guide it down straight. Once they are in place, this will help you to lower it down straight without damaging your sensor rotor. Now that our clutch housing is fully seated, we can go ahead and remove our bolts, our lifting links, and our suitable lifting device. Now we'll go ahead and install our ring gear. With our ring gear installed, we can go ahead and install our 5 reaction dowels. Once those are installed, we can install our first friction disc, then our clutch plate, and our last friction disc. Now we'll go ahead and install our 5 rods and 5 springs. With our seal carrier firmly in the press, we are going to install our new bearing. Make sure your pusher plate fully seats on your outer race. We're going to press down until our bearing is fully seated. With our bearing installed in our seal carrier, we're going to install our seals. With your seals, if they are relaxed to where you see a gap, the proper way to tighten these up is you grab both ends and you wrap them around. And that will tighten them up. We're going to go ahead and use a suitable petrol gel. You'll want to install a little bit right where the opening of your seals go. Now we're going to install our O-ring on the clutch housing. And we're going to use some transmission oil to lube our O-ring. Now we're going to install our seal carrier. Until it fully seats. Then we'll install our retaining ring. With our M16 lifting links and our suitable lifting device attached to our clutch housing, we can now go ahead and install. You'll want to make sure all your springs seat into the corresponding hole. Once they are all in, you should be able to lower the rest of the way. Then you'll have your two dials that need to be lined up. Now that we are fully seated, we can go ahead and remove our lifting links and suitable lifting device. With our clutch housing installed, we can go ahead and install our 11 bolts. With all of our bolts installed, we can go ahead and use our 19mm socket to snug them up. You'll want to go evenly on both sides until the springs are fully compressed. Now that they are all snugged up, we can go ahead and get our torque wrench and torque them down. With our torque wrench set to 75 foot-pounds, we can now torque down our bolts. We will go ahead and install our new seals into our clutch piston. Note there is a lip and you will be wanting it to face up. Install our outer seal. There is also a lip on this one. Make sure it is facing up. Now we'll apply some transmission oil. We'll go ahead and install our clutch piston. the seal carrier can be moved by hand. You want to make sure that you line up 3 holes, and then you can rotate your output shaft, and that will line up your bolt holes. Then you can go ahead and install your Allen bolts. There are 8 total. You will have to snug them up and torque them before you rotate it to get access to the next ones. Now that we got them snugged up by hand, we'll use our torque wrench to tighten them to 9 foot-pounds. Now that these 3 are torqued, we can go ahead and spin our output shaft to get access to our next 2. Now that they're snug, we'll torque them. We'll go ahead and rotate our output shaft again. Now that they're snug, we'll torque them. After rotating the output shaft to get access to our last bolt, now we can go ahead and install and torque it. We will now go ahead and install our 2 retaining rings. The smaller one will go on our output shaft on the inner one, and then the bigger one will go on the output shaft on the outside. Now we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring on our output shaft, the outer one. There are 2 notches. You'll want to go to the lower one. We'll install our retaining ring onto our reaction plate. Set it on top of our clutch hub. With the assistance, we will compress the retaining ring and let it fall into its groove. Now that both our retaining rings are installed, we can go ahead and install our clutch hub. With our retaining ring pliers, we can now go ahead and install our retaining ring. Now we install our inner clutch hub. With our retaining ring pliers, we can now install our next retaining ring. With our retaining ring installed, we can now install our first friction disc. Our clutch plate. And we'll repeat that until we get to our last friction disc. There will be 5 friction discs and 4 clutch plates. The oil will be coming through your rotating housing through these oil galleys and pressing against your clutch piston. So when you install your seal rings, note there is a lip and you will be wanting it to face up. We'll go ahead and install the first one. We'll go ahead for the outer. We're going to use transmission oil to lube both our seal rings and our sealing surfaces. We will go ahead and install our clutch piston. Make sure your splines are aligned. Now we'll install our Belleville springs. You'll want to note the orientation of the springs, starting with cup down, then alternate up, down, up, down. Once they are all on, you can install your spacer. Make sure the groove is facing up. Then you can set your retaining ring on top and we'll move over to the press. Now that our rotating housing is in the press, we're going to install our plate and go ahead and compress it down until we can see the groove for the retaining ring, and then we'll go ahead and work the retaining ring on. Make sure the retaining ring is fully seated by turning it within the groove. Once you ensure that it has, slowly release the press. We'll install our retaining ring onto our rotating housing assembly. Once it is installed, we can go ahead and set it in place. With the retaining ring in place, you can lower it down, and then we'll compress the retaining ring to let it drop into place. Now that it is dropped in, we can release our retaining ring. We'll go ahead and install our reaction dials. Should have 6. With our reaction dials installed, we can go ahead and install our first friction disc, then our clutch plate. And we'll repeat this until we get to our last friction disc. Now we'll go ahead and install our rods. We should have 4 of those. Then we'll install our springs. Now we'll go ahead and install our O-ring. Then we can install our seal rings. We'll use a little petrol gel to hold the seal rings in place. Now that we've lowered the temperature of our bearing, we've used our driver group to make sure it's fully seated. A good check is to know that you can see your retaining ring groove all the way around. Now we'll go ahead and install our retaining ring. So our new O-ring. Apply some transmission oil to our O-ring. With our M16 link brackets installed in our manifold assembly and our suitable lifting device, we can now go ahead and install. An easy way to tell if you're lined up is you'll have your oil passage coming through your manifold. You'll want to align all your springs into your corresponding pockets. Now that we're fully seated, we can go ahead and remove our lifting links and suitable lifting device. Now we can go ahead and install our bolts into our manifold assembly. There are 6 total. With them all snugged up, we can now use our 19mm socket and torque wrench set to 40 foot-pounds to tighten them down. You want to evenly tighten them down to compress the springs. Now that the springs are compressed, you can run the rest down. And we'll torque them. Using our retaining ring pliers, we can now install our retaining ring. We'll need a pry bar. We'll insert it into the hole in the clutch hub and then pry against the bolt. This will give us room to install our retaining ring. Now that we've installed our 3 new O-rings, we can install our solenoid valve assembly back into our valve. Then we can install our Allen bolts. Using our 3mm Allen, we can go ahead and tighten them down. Now we can install our new O-ring into our nipple. Now after installing our O-ring onto our nipple, we'll go ahead and install. We can now install our relief valve. Right now I'll go ahead and snug the bolts up, and I'll torque them after we install the harness. I'll leave a bolt out for the harness clip. Now we'll install our solenoid valve onto clutch pack number 1. Once again, I'll just snug these up and torque them, and once we install the harness, this bolt will be left out for a harness clip. snugging it up and leaving a bolt out for the harness clip. We will now go ahead and install our modulating valve. Be sure your orifice plate is installed. You will see there is a hole where your spring pin will line up for your modulating valves. That'll be the same for both. I'll go ahead and snug this up. And I'll leave this bolt hole empty for our harness. Next, we have our solenoid valve. I'll go ahead and snug it up. Then we have our last modulating valve. Be sure your orifice plate is installed. Once again, I'll snug these up. We can now install our drain tube. You want to make sure you don't cross thread it. Now that it's snugged up, we'll use our torque wrench and torque it to 80 inch-pounds. Now we'll install the new O-ring onto our speed sensor. And we'll go ahead and do that for both. We can now install our speed sensor. This is the first of two. With it snugged up, we can now torque it to 22 foot-pounds with our 10 millimeter. With it snugged up, we can now torque it down to 22 foot-pounds. Now we can go ahead and install our harness. The easiest way will be connecting your sensors first. When connecting the harness to the speed sensors, make sure that the red tabs on the connectors are locked down. And you want to work your way down through the clips. Now that you're down to your last two clips, we can go ahead and install our solenoid valve. Now that they are all snugged up, we can go ahead and install our connectors. Now we can go ahead and torque all our bolts. Now that we have our torque wrench set to 22 foot-pounds, we can use our 10 millimeter socket and go ahead and torque all the bolts up. You want to be sure you don't put strain on your harness by bending the clips. Now that everything is torqued, we can now install our cable straps. One on the speed sensor and 2 on the solenoid valves. We can now position our harness receptacle into the housing and install our lock nut. Now we can install our new O-rings onto our tube assembly. We'll apply some transmission oil to both, and we'll repeat for the second tube. We can now install our tubes. Our bolts and strips. With our 8mm Allen and our torque wrench set to 40 foot-pounds, we can now torque it down. We can now install our second tube. Be sure on this strip that the shorter side is on top, otherwise you will not be able to get it to go in. Now that we're snug down, we can use our torque wrench set to 40 foot-pounds to torque our bolt. Now we'll install our O-rings. We have one in the back, 2 in the front, and then our large O-ring.
Thank you for watching our videos.
Please like, comment,
and subscribe to our channel.
have a safe work day.